Over 1,700 new millionaires are created every single day in the US alone, and more than double that across the globe. They're people from all walks of life, most of them people just like you and I. So the big question is this: how are so many people who didn't inherit money or have any special advantages overcoming the odds and becoming millionaires? That's the question, and this show will give you the answers. My name is Jeff Lerner, and welcome to Millionaire Secrets. Welcome to another episode of Millionaire Secrets. This is Jeff Lerner, your host. Excited to be back with you yet again, inspiring, empowering, hopefully informing you on how to make your life more awesome by achieving physical, personal, and professional excellence. And in particular with this show, we like to get ridiculously successful people on the show and dig deep into the secrets and strategies of what makes them tick. Today we have Rachel Richards joining us. She is a best-selling author, 2 books to her credit that I know of, which is a lot for someone she's only 28, retired. She's retired at 28. Yes, I said that right. Retired last year with passive income from real estate. Used to be a financial advisor. She's a speaker. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author. She's dare I say, a guru, and now she's our guest on Millionaire Secrets. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Man, when I was your age, I was 1 year away from being $500,000 in debt because my franchise restaurants collapsed. So actually, when I was your age now, I was just trying to operate those, and they were fast failing. It only took me a year to run 2 of them into the ground.
Well, they say to fail fast. That's the best way to do it. So
I know, right? At least I didn't waste a decade on those restaurants. But my future was clearly not in the restaurant business. Anyway, just extremely impressive what you've done, and maybe you can take us back, because probably the first question that comes to mind is. Actually, I want to go back further than this. I was going to talk about being a financial advisor, but I was like, hold on, wait a minute. You sold Cutco knives, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, let's roll back to that. I own a very nice set of Cutco knives that I bought for my wife. And I had this cheesy little insignia put on the knife block. Yeah. And I get made fun of it forever because it was so cheesy, but whatever, it's a running joke. Anyway, Cutco knives, that's direct. That's like as direct sales get.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Were you in Costco, or where were you doing that? Door to door?
No, Costco wasn't really a thing with Cutco when I was selling. I sold it in 2010 through 2014 when I was in college.
Okay.
And the main way I sold it was through referral. That's how most people are selling Cutco. It's not really door to door, but you're getting referred to people that, your friends and family know.
Okay. So it's like, it's kind of got an MLM aspect to it, only is it just frontline commissions, or do you actually build a team too?
No, you don't have anyone under you. Like MLM. So it gets mistaken for MLM a lot, but it's not. It's just a direct sales company.
Okay. Cool. That's hard work.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't think I've ever worked harder in my life than I did in the summers I was in college selling Cutco, because part of the reason I sold is that I graduated from high school and I had this massive fear of going into debt because I'd already read finance books. I was a total finance nerd, and I didn't want to be crippled with student debt for the next, 20 or 30 years of my life. At the time, I was working at American Eagle, making $200 per paycheck. Mm-hmm. And obviously that was not going to pay for tuition. And I knew I was going to have to pay for school all on my own. So I went in to interview for this crazy knife job, as they call it.
Right.
And at first I was like, okay, weird, kind of weird. But then this was the first time I'd been exposed to something where the harder you work, the more money you make. And I knew I could outwork anyone. So I got super excited. I worked my butt off that summer. I sold enough knives to make 10 grand and pay for my first year of tuition. And that's basically what I did every year until I was able to graduate completely debt-free.
Wow. Congratulations. Awesome. Just awesome. I have a whole section on my YouTube channel that I call School of Awesome, Advice for Young People. And in a nutshell, I'm basically talking about taking a non-traditional view of college and establishment education, largely because of exactly what you just said, which is the ROI on that debt and the crippling, well, the ROI is like, it's not a good equation. And the crippling effect that it has on people in their 20s and 30s trying to dig out of it. It's like not in the brochure, and it's tragic, almost to the point of criminality, I think, for some universities. So I think that's super cool.
Yes, I can't agree more. I mean, it's predatory lending. I talk about the same thing in Money Honey about trying to calculate the ROI and realizing it's probably not as good as you think. I mean, I remember I got a financial economics degree, and my professors were saying the average starting salary for someone with this degree is 60 grand. And so I thought, cool, I can pay the 10 grand a year in tuition. I'll make out fine. And then my first job out of college as a financial advisor, I was making something like $32,000 or $36,000. So it was just, expectations did not align with reality.
Yeah. I made a Twitter post a couple of weeks ago that got a pretty good response where I just found a statistic that was the average Harvard graduate, which, you're talking about a multiple six-figure education. If you go to Harvard for 4 years with room and board and everything, average Harvard graduate at the age of 34, 12 years after they get their bachelor's, earns $82,000 a year.
Oh my gosh.
If you can't graduate from Harvard and then go into the workforce for more than a decade and be at least statistically likely to make six figures, I don't know how we've gotten to this point and how it's not like a bigger thing, and how the entire federal education system, and I'm not one for government controls, but like, it's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be part of the self-education movement, which you are too, about saying like, you can go to someone like Rachel, or you go to someone like Jeff and learn more valuable skills in many cases that'll actually impact your quality of life than, for pennies on the dollar, compared to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and putting yourself in a debt that's going to take you 20 years to pay off. It's like graduating from school with no job and you already have a mortgage.
Yeah, it's insane. And I love the way you put that, because we're in the internet age. You can go out and find free information anywhere, or pay way less for information that's more valuable than a college degree.
Yeah, amen. So, I mean, good on you that that you got the information, you took action on it, and something clearly went right in your life to be the kind of person that would take action on that. And actually, maybe let's back up to that, because a lot of 18-year-olds, I mean, they work at American Eagle. They know that, quote, a job doesn't pay for crap. I mean, my son right now, it's funny, he turned 16. We bought him a car. He's a super grateful kid, which is why we felt good buying him a nice, quality, reliable automobile. And he's out driving, or so as soon as he has a car, he's like, I'm going to go get a job. I'm a worker. I'm a hustler. And he has a job. I think he makes $7.25 an hour.
That's exactly what I made at American Eagle.
And so he literally can barely pay for his gas with his job. So it's like but that's many kids' experience, but yet many kids don't do what you did, which is go, okay, well, what do I have? I have my youthful energy. I have my agile mind. I have my hustle and grit. So let me go deal with this a different way, because I don't want to borrow money. How were you that person? Like, no, for lack of a better way to say it, what made you different and smart?
I think they say fear is the greatest motivator. I think that's very true because at a young age in middle school and high school, I grew up in a really wealthy county. And people I knew in my high school, when they turned 16, they would get brand new BMWs. And my family was not operating that way, right? We weren't going on vacations, let alone even going out to eat at restaurants. So from a young age, I felt like I didn't fit in. And that's definitely not the way you want to feel in middle school and in high school.
Right.
So I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to end up like everyone else struggling with money. I don't want to have to be on a budget my whole life or borrow money from family and friends to make it to my next paycheck. I wanted to be different. And I realized what I did then at a young age would either set me up for wealth or for poverty. So it was this fear that drove me forward, fear of not having enough money. You know, I grew up with this a very scarcity mindset, essentially, that there's never enough money to go around. I wanted to have enough money to take care of myself and my loved ones if anything happened. And that is why I am so ambitious and so goal-oriented, and I've achieved so much at a young age.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful combination. Fear's a hard loaded word, you know, but let's call it circumspection. I don't know. I'm struggling for like a word I like more than fear, but whatever it is, that coupled with just like intense work ethic, coupled with a willingness to step out, take action, and bet on yourself. Because a lot of times what I find, this is why I don't love the word fear. I find fearful people a lot of times are also kind of paralyzed people. So their fear becomes a state that they're no longer taking massive action. You still took this great action. You basically bet on yourself, which a lot of fear-based people don't do, in my experience. So I mean, because it's not like you went and said, well, I don't know what you would go do to make a lot of money. But like you said, I know I can outwork everyone. I'm willing to do this very difficult thing, which, I mean, you're selling knives like to people. Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't already own knives.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like there's a built-in demand for what you have, for what you're selling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, how did you have the confidence as an 18-year-old to say, yeah, I can do that? I mean, I think that's why a lot of kids wouldn't try it, because they just wouldn't even see it as a possibility.
Yeah, that's so true. I've always been a very stubborn and independent individual. And when I set my mind to something, nothing stops me. And it's funny because my parents learned that about me at a young age. They're very supportive. And of course, when I first decided to sell Cutco, my mom in particular was less than thrilled about the idea of me selling sharp objects to, you know, family, friends, and strangers. But she knew to just stay out of my way and let me do my thing. And I did it really well and successfully. I just remember my mindset at the time, failure wasn't even an option. I was going to make Cutco work. That I just remember thinking there was no other option. This is what I was going to do.
Yeah, I've been there. You know, when I got started online, I had $500,000 in debt and I was a piano player. So like, what do you do? I wasn't going to declare bankruptcy. I wasn't going to die. And I didn't want to fight with the U.S. Treasury Department because they were SBA loans. So I had literally the government calling me wherever I went. Somehow the phone would ring. They'd find me. I was like, this isn't going to be my life. I have no choice. And you know, made it work. So, but it's just so cool. I'm kind of riffing on this point. It's so cool, because it's so rare to find that in an 18-year-old. Yeah. Usually you find that in like 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds who've like, they just got divorced or their life went off the rails somehow, or they're recovering and they're just like, I'm fed up. I don't want to be at rock bottom anymore. Now I'm going to commit. But it's so rare at 18. I don't know. Maybe I've made my point, but way to go.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. And so now you're 28, you've written 2 books, which I'm 41 and I've written multiple ebooks, but as far as an actual book to sell on a shelf in a store, I'm still working on mine. So, you know, I respect that too. But so you get out of college, no debt, you go work as a financial advisor. You're making, what'd you say, 36, 32?
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. You figure out that's not the move. Start investing in real estate.
Yes.
Which So now my immediate question is, okay, you're making 30 something thousand dollars a year. How the heck do you have the money to go invest in real estate?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because I'm 28. I own almost 40 units. So the question I get more than anything is, are you a trust fund baby? And the answer is no. No, I'm not. I've actually never made six figures in my life. So the reason I was able to start purchasing real estate is I was just able to be very frugal and responsible with my money at a young age. So even when I was making 30 something thousand dollars, I was saving 50% of my income. It was a big sacrifice. I wasn't living the life that my friends were living. You know, if I went out to dinner, I wasn't buying anything. I was eating beforehand and going out and having fun. And
Right.
I rented out a room from somebody I found online who ended up being a good friend of mine. I was working out outside. I didn't have a gym membership. So I just found ways to be extremely frugal. So it didn't take very long to save up a little chunk of money. The other thing we had going for us is that we invested, when I say we, me and my husband, we invested in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's a great place to invest. Housing prices are reasonable. Really anywhere in the Midwest where there's a good rental market is a great place to invest. So our first duplex cost $100,000. We each put in $10,000 just from our own savings so that we could get the down payment for the first property. So that's how we got started with real estate.
Okay. Well, so, I mean, if you're making 30 something thousand and you're saving 50% after tax, so, I mean, you're basically living on like 15 grand a year.
Yes, I was. I remember my monthly expenses at times would be, it would be $1,000.
I mean, well, that's the answer, folks. You know,
That's how you
like,
retire early. No.
Yeah. I mean, you when we talk about sacrifice, get clear on what you want, and it has to be so big and compelling that you're willing to sacrifice in the short term. I'd say you did. I mean, $1,000 a month to live is crazy. And okay, so then you start doing that. God, it all happened so fast. I mean, you're only 28. So, and you retired a year ago. So you started doing that, what, at 22, like when you got out of college?
No, actually, I didn't start investing in real estate until I was 27. So it was definitely a few years, in 2017.
Okay. So
is when I started.
When you were like, what, 26 or no, 25?
25. Yeah, 25.
Okay. So you started in 2017. You retired in 2019.
Yes, it went very fast. I never thought it would go so fast. My initial plan with real estate was to buy one single family house per year for 15 years, all on 15-year mortgages. And so I figured after that 15-year period, when the mortgages started getting paid off, I would retire. So my initial goal was to retire in my mid-30s. However, it obviously happened a lot faster. We were able to scale for a couple different reasons. First, we were already saving a good chunk of our incomes. Not that we were making six figures, I've never made six figures, but we were saving a good chunk of money. Secondly, any house that we purchased, we weren't going out and spending the cash flow. We weren't increasing our quality of life and spending more money. We were saving and reinvesting all of the cash flow. And then third, this is the most important part, is that I had my real estate license from a couple stints I had earlier in real estate. And I never had it to have clients or help people buy and sell houses. I only had it for my own purposes as an investor. So in every deal, I would represent myself as the buyer's agent. And after it closed, we would completely wipe out our savings to buy a property. But after it closed, I would get a commission check back for thousands of dollars. And that would kind of kickstart our savings for the next property. So that's how we were able to scale so quickly.
So yeah, because typically the seller's agent is going to split their 6% with the buyer's agent. Or 4 to 6%, whatever it is.
Exactly. So on a $100,000 deal, let's say, I would make almost $3,000.
Yeah. Which if you're putting up 10 or 15, 10 or 20, whatever, between you and your husband, and then you're able to immediately put roughly 20% of that back. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's almost like if you could take like a 6-year-old kid and put like a 65-year-old brain in the 6-year-old kid and be like, okay, little Billy, this is how you're going to live for the next 30 years so that you can have the most accelerated timeline to retirement imaginable. That's basically you, only you're not Billy, you're Rachel. And it's just still, what's crazy about this story, and I hope everybody's having the same reaction to me, like, that's it. Like, there's nothing actually magical about that. It's actually just shows how doable it is. Because like literally, I mean, tell me what I'm missing, but other than maybe saying, well, I was fortunate that I was in Louisville, Kentucky, is there anything, like any twist that I'm not hearing that makes what happened for you different than what could happen for someone else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, when you think about it, it's the most boring story. It's save a lot of money and then buy a property. I mean, there's not a lot to
so it's interesting to try to diagnose, like, okay, where would that plan go wrong for most people? So you found a husband who was on board with the same program.
Yes.
Right.
So, and that was helpful because I think it's less scary to invest when you have, a business partner or somebody you're doing it with. It's almost like you feel like the risk is shared between another person. Right. So that made it easier because it's obviously a scary thing to get started. But I think where most new investors make a mistake is when they're projecting out the numbers and kind of running the numbers on the property. I think they severely underestimate the expenses. And they could end up buying something that's not a great investment, because it's easy to think, okay, here's the rent, here's the mortgage payment. So rent minus mortgage, this is how much I'm going to be making. No, that could not be farther from the truth. You have to think about things like the HOA fee and the lawn care. Who's going to pay for that? You or the tenant. What about the utilities? Who's going to pay for that? What about vacancy, maintenance, capital expenditure, property manager? There are so many different expenses associated with owning a rental property. So if you can estimate those correctly and be really conservative, that's one thing I always did well, was I was very conservative in my numbers, added a buffer even for all the expenses I might not be thinking about. And if the numbers still work, then that investment property is gold and you should put an offer in.
Yeah. And those property, so, I mean, it's cool. I noticed you have Rich Dad, Poor Dad on your shelf. I have it. I have my copy right here.
I love it.
And this is a new copy, but I had one 20 years ago when I was in my early 20s. And I read that, and at like early 20s, I started kind of what you're saying, like I'm gonna buy a house. And frankly, I a few of them I still have, and I'm talking houses that I did a cash advance off a credit. I did all the stuff that conservative, smart Rachel would have told me not to do. Like I did a cash advance off a credit card to get the down payment. Now I'm paying that back at 24% interest or whatever. But a couple of those I still own. I actually acquired 4 in my 20s. 2 I still own. 2 I lost. Got foreclosed, wrecked my credit. Didn't really matter because I also lost the restaurant, so credit was shot anyways. But it was exactly because of what you just said. Failure to properly account. And like, even when you read the books, they'll be like, well, you should figure a 10 to 20% vacancy rate. But it's like, maybe over time that's true, but you have to be able to deal with what if it's 50% in that first year? Because if you don't survive the first year, you won't have 20 more years for it to average out. Exactly.
Always run multiple scenarios. Run the numbers, what you actually think they'll be, but then run a worst case scenario and ask yourself, if I had to carry the mortgage for 5 months, would I be able to financially, or is that going to cripple me? Because those are the kinds of things you have to survive as a property owner.
Yeah, because they're going to happen at some point. And if you're lucky, they don't happen until you've had the property for 10 years. But if you're unlucky, they can happen in the first or second year.
Yeah, exactly.
It's happening to me. And then you lose everything.
Mm-hmm. It's happening to me right now with coronavirus.
Yeah.
My rental income has been impacted a ton. I mean, in a normal month, we make anywhere from 8 to 10 or 12 grand per month in profit from our rentals alone. Mm-hmm. But then in April, when coronavirus got really intense, we only made $1,000 from our rental properties in profit. So
and you're not allowed to evict anyone. The CDC.
Yeah, it's awful. So enormous decrease. But the way I saw it is, there's a lot of landlords obviously doing better than me. There's a lot that are worse off than me. And if my worst case scenario is that I break even for a few months, I'm totally fine with that. But the only reason I wasn't in a total panic in April is because I had other income streams keeping me afloat. And that's the importance of income diversification. Have multiple sources of income, because that way you're covered when, not if, something happens to your primary income source.
So everything you're saying is in the category of, if you've been around this type of thing, right? If you read personal development books, if you read business development books, if you're reading investing, like this is all standard fare insight for people that do commit to developing that part of their life, right? Like, you know, multiple streams of income, erring on the side of caution, living frugal. I mean, you know, it's like kind of like common sense stuff.
Yeah.
And yet it's not common at all, because so few people do it. So I'm curious, your vantage point on like, why is it that this stuff is so easy to say, but so hard for most people to do?
I love this question. So I make the analogy between finance and dieting all the time, because we all know what we should be doing. We know not to eat sugar, and we know to work out, and we know to save money for the future. So why don't we do it? It's because self-discipline is so much harder. You know, having the knowledge, fine, but it doesn't really count. What counts is implementation. And when it comes to those two things, it really comes down to the ability to delay gratification. Can you sacrifice pleasure now so that you can obtain an even bigger reward in the future? If you can see it that way and you can execute on that, then you'll have a lot of success.
You're familiar, I'm guessing, with the Stanford marshmallow experiment?
Yes, I am. I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. I feel like those of us that are really into this stuff, like there's only so many, like so much lore and so many of these stories and so much data and so many, you know, like everybody knows the story of R.U. Darby, who quit digging for gold 3 feet from gold, you know, this opening of Think and Grow Rich. A lot of us know the Stanford marshmallow experiment. A lot of us know the cash flow quadrant. Like, man, but like you said, it's all about implementation. It's all about implementation. And that's what I think really just still kind of, I'll say it again, staggers me about you. Is like, I don't know very many 18-year-olds that are great implementers. That, like, apparently you were born as a great implementer.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was different. I don't know if it just had a rebel streak. And I mean, I've always had the attitude of I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. So maybe that's part of it. But I'm glad, because I truly think that like one of the secrets to success is focusing on execution. We can consume all day. I can read books all day. I can listen to podcasts and do that stuff all day. But are you taking action on it? Because that's the only part that matters.
Mm-hmm. So what is your... You know, I gotta assume that someone to be as successful as you, as quickly as you, is very disciplined, and that probably shows up in like routines or habits or behavioral patterns that you're kind of maybe anchored to. And first of all, am I right? And secondly, could you talk about them if so?
Yeah, 100%. Have you read the book The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod? Okay,
yeah,
one of my...
Savers.
Yes, The Savers. It's one of my top 5 favorite books. Totally changed my life. And I implement those practices daily. But a couple of the ones that are my favorites are meditation. Even if you only have 5 minutes to meditate, it can change your whole day. And not only did I do it for anxiety and stress, but I noticed once I was doing it consistently, I had such greater focus, and I was able to be a lot more productive because I wasn't getting distracted by everything, because it's all about controlling your thoughts and controlling your mind. So that's been a huge one for me. Another thing that I like to do, especially if I'm just not in a great mindset, I'm feeling down, I will do a daily gratitude practice. And I like to do it at the end of the day. I'll write down 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for. And I used to think that this was just silly, like stupid thing that somebody would do. But then, because I'm a very practical person, I don't love the woo-woo stuff. But then once I actually started doing it, and I did that for several days in a row, I noticed that I was automatically looking for things to be grateful for throughout the day. And I trained my mind to have this attitude of gratitude. So I love that practice, because you can really train your mind to be more positive. And then the other one is reading. I love to read, but again, the focus has to be on the execution of what you're learning, not just reading. But I also love reading for pleasure, fiction books. I'll do half and half.
Do you, and I say this like kind of tongue in cheek, but like, do you think like you're kind of actually a boring person? Like it would be boring. It would be boring to just like watch your day.
I don't know. I probably before I retired, because all I did was work. I mean, we
Yeah.
worked 80-hour weeks before I quit my job. But now it's so funny because I've always been so goal oriented. I've always focused on how can I monetize this? How can I monetize this? And now that I've quit my job and I have all this time, I've realized, okay, Rachel, you don't have to monetize everything you do, right? It's okay to have fun. It's okay
Right.
to have a hobby that you do just for pleasure. So now we're doing more hiking and I'm doing more things just for fun as a hobby. We're even thinking about taking a year next year to travel all around the Western US.
So what was it that you were really after, like as you were doing this? And I'll say, I wouldn't be surprised if at 28 years old, it doesn't change. Like you still have all this time. You could decide when you're 35, like, oh, there's this other thing. But I mean, at least thus far, what is it that you were really after? And do you feel like you've achieved it?
I was after freedom. And to be specific, I lived in Kentucky for most of my life. And I love Kentucky, but I also want to travel and explore the world and I want to climb mountains. So I knew I didn't want to live there my whole life. So the thought of being constrained to a location, I hated that. I wanted to be able to work wherever I wanted to work. And then the other thing that I began to disagree with as I was working in the corporate workforce was this attitude of trading your time for money. I hated that. I remember I would work 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at one job. And so it was a normal day. It was just moved up by half an hour because that's what I preferred. And my manager at the time sat down with me and she said, Rachel, you're not really creating the right perceptions by leaving at 4:30. I don't think that looks good. I think you need to wait until 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm getting all of my work done and then some. And you're more worried about the perceptions and the time and the hours that I'm putting in instead of my output. I hated that, especially after selling Cutco and being rewarded for output. That's how I think we should be paid, is based on what you're achieving in a day. So it just began to make me feel a little bit trapped. I didn't want to be trapped to certain hours or to a certain location. I wanted to have freedom of my time, freedom of my location, total financial independence. That's what I was going after. And yes, I definitely think I've achieved it, because now I get to work when, where, and if I want, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I gratefully achieved it too. And I guess my follow-up question is, now that you have this time or this freedom, that you've kind of reached the promised land, do you feel it like an itch developing for like the next big thing? And if so, do you have a clue what it is, or are you just enjoying it right now?
Right now, I'm just enjoying it, although I've always been such a goal-oriented person. But I also realize that I have to be able to relax and reset and recharge and just not be on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to be okay with just like not constantly working towards something. But one of my big dreams that I've had ever since I was a little kid is to write a fiction novel. I used to write short stories when I was little. So that's an example of something I'm just doing right now for fun, but could be a bigger goal that I work towards in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think about my parents. They were able to retire in their early 50s, built a nice house, moved to the mountains in Montana, like just totally their dream. And after a few years, my dad was like, he's like, I'm 54. What do I do? I got lots of time left. Like, and he just got antsy and he like ended up going back into work or doing a whole new thing. I think that's, inevitable probably. So fiction writing. What about real estate? Do you have any aspirations to keep really growing that big? Or is it enough to just say, hey, I'm well cared for. This is good.
Yeah, we haven't acquired any properties since 2018. We bought them all within that 2-year span, and we haven't bought any more. At the time, it was just because of a time constraint. We were still working full time and we couldn't take on any more.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when I think about it, real estate for us has been a means to an end. It's created a financial income stream so that we can do the other things that we want to do. I never was super passionate about real estate investing in that I wanted to create some massive empire. It's kind of serving its purpose right now, and it lets me do the things that I'm really passionate about. because I use the words retired and financially independent interchangeably. You know, a lot of people retire and then they do the beach thing, and that's fine. I just get bored so easily. So I still want to be working on something. I still want to make an impact on the world. So a lot of my time is spent basically figuring that out.
I know that you speak, like you go out and speak at like universities and talk to younger people and stuff. Have you ever done do you do any like client work? Have you ever done any coaching or consulting or mentorship or anything like that?
No, people ask me that a lot, and I've really stayed away from that because for whatever reason, I just don't like the idea of one-on-one. I think it's because I know I can make a bigger impact on more people by spending my time elsewhere, by writing my books and doing my online courses. So that's what I prefer.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is because if you had said yes, I was going to really dig in. I'm like, so how is that? Because you strike me as a person that would probably be not have a ton of patience for it. Because you're such an implementer, you're such a driven, goal-oriented, directed person that you're going to get some 45-year-old who calls you back 3 weeks in a row and is like, yeah, I still haven't called the bank. I know you told me to. I know I should. Like, you just strike me as a person that would just be like, I'm done. I'm out. Here's your refund. I can't help you because you won't help yourself.
You know what? I honestly think you hit the nail on the head. I'm impatient. So I can't do that. And I don't want to trade my time for money. That's the other thing.
Right. Okay. So you've written 2 books and you said you have a course?
Yes, I just launched my first course this year. I'm about to launch my second. It's a ton of fun. It's called Get Your Financial Shit Together. So it's super, sassy, and it's a lot of fun. It goes along with my first book, right?
Yeah,
Money Honey.
Or my painting. Yeah, I love it.
I know, that's why I loved it. So yeah, it goes along with Money Honey, really about the basics of finance and learning about budgeting and debt payoff and investing.
Where's that course available?
It's on my website, moneyhoneyrachel.com.
Okay. I'm asking because I'll at least look at it. I mean, it's like I'd probably go through it if I have time, but yeah, I just love digital course creators and the whole self-education movement. So, okay. And then like, where do you see yourself going with the information marketing, teaching, publishing, that part of your life?
I think more of what I'm doing, because I love what I'm doing. I'm a strong writer, so I prefer creating written content over speaking, actually. So I'm sure I'll eventually write another nonfiction book. I'll continue to create online courses, and I'm thinking about offering a mastermind next year for women who want to create passive income.
Ooh, I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
A women-focused passive income mastermind. That strikes me as pretty genius.
It's kind of my dream. I just think it'd be fun to work with. If somebody's willing to make that kind of investment, then they're really committed. They're going to take it seriously. And I think it'd be fun to work with a small, close group of women that want to become financially independent.
Yeah. I run a mastermind. My company, Entre, we have coaching, and I'm involved in the mastermind, but not the coaching, because I think a lot like you, where like a mastermind I'm totally cool with, because I'm not responsible for the motivation. I'm not responsible for the accountability or the follow through. Like, we're just there to share insight and wisdom and support each other and validate each other and celebrate with each other and love on each other when things are hard. But like, nobody's expecting me to coach them through it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I love that, but yeah, coaching is hard for me. It is so cool to hear. I mean, even specifically, you use the word implementation. Like, that is just because in my programs, my education company, we have a whole section called the Implementation Boot Camp that doesn't actually teach anybody anything. It tries to shape them into a person that will be a great implementer.
That's so cool.
Which is a whole different process from educating about how to market or how to, run a business. It's more just like how to be a badass.
Yeah,
in life,
I love
it. Okay, so what else? So savers. Let me see if I can remember my savers. It's
Scribing.
Scribing,
Right.
affirmations, visualization, exercise,
Reading,
and what's the other S?
Silence.
Silence. Okay. So you do all 6 of those every morning?
No, I have before. I would love to sit here and say, yes, I do them every morning and I'm perfect. No. I would say when I do them most consistently is when I'm really struggling, especially if I'm going through anything with mental health. I like to talk openly about mental health issues because there's such a stigma against it. But, as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of us suffer from burnout. And for me, the burnout led into anxiety, which led into depression at one point about 1.5 years ago. And that's when I really picked up the Miracle Morning and took it seriously and committed to doing a practice every single morning with no excuses. And I honestly credit that book to helping me overcome depression. It's one of the best things that ever happened. So that's why I'm such a proponent of it. But even now, when I'm feeling a lot better, I'm totally healthy, I will still do those practices if I feel like, man, I just had a bad day. I need tomorrow to go a little bit better. So I'm going to do my Miracle Morning. So that's basically how I use it.
I'm really appreciative that you touched on mental health. I read a quote the other day, and I can't remember who it was, or I don't know, it was a quote. It was just a commentary from someone about the difference between the fine line between crazy and genius. And he said, it's actually the only real difference is a heart of service. Like, a super insane smart person who serves humanity is a genius. That's the Elon Musks and the Albert Einsteins of the world. They do things that make the world a better place. Crazy is literally the same intelligence, but applying it or not applying it in ways that actually help the world. But it's actually the same mind. It's a different heart between crazy and genius. I thought that was really interesting. But it got me thinking, like, because obviously when I read that, I was like, well, where do I stand? Like, I'm pretty smart, but am I helping? Like, I hope I'm not crazy. I'd rather be a genius, but I don't know that I'm either. But in general, like entrepreneurs and anybody that takes the road less traveled in this world, I mean, I don't know if you're technically, you're an entrepreneur. You write books, you speak, even your real estate investing is a form of entrepreneurship. Like, we have to be a little off our rocker to have the gumption to like be like, screw you world, I'm doing my thing. I'm going to swim upstream and go against the grain of what all of you are telling me is quote normal, because I see how screwed up it actually is. And I'm not afraid. I'm not crippled by insecurity or fear of judgment or low self-esteem or whatever. So I'm actually going to do it. That's like that. Whether you're crazy or genius, you're on that thin line. And so I'm glad you talked about mental health, because I've struggled a lot with mental health. I suspect a lot of people that have this burning desire to do this, road less traveled thing, are struggling in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, the road less traveled is a lonely road. It can feel very isolating to feel like your family and friends, maybe they're supportive, but they still don't get you. They still don't understand what are these crazy things you're doing, right? So it can definitely feel lonely, and especially when you get into those struggles with mental health, that can be a really scary place. So I'm glad that we talked about it.
The Road Less Traveled is also a wonderful book on mental health by Scott Peck.
I didn't even know that.
That opens with one of my favorite quotes that roughly goes, it says, what does it say? Sanity is a commitment to seeing things exactly as they are, no matter what the price tag. And I think about that a lot. I mean, honestly, I'll be honest. Like, you've peeled back a layer here. Like, I've wrestled a lot with mental health, partly not self-destructive, but like a questioning of like, is this normal? Am I okay?
Yes.
But also sometimes wrestling with this conundrum of like, it actually makes more sense to me to do it this way, but everybody else seems to think that's the crazy way. So is that actually a hallmark of a mental health problem that, like, they say insane people don't think they're sick? Is that me? I don't know, because it's like, I don't understand people taking on a bunch of student debt. I don't understand people trading time for money. I don't understand people abdicating freedom of location. I don't understand people subjugating their natural human independent instinct to just generally do what they're told all the time. I don't get any of that. And clearly, I don't think you do either.
No, for me, it's like whatever fulfills somebody, that's fine. I just knew that working a 9 to 5, it just wasn't in the cards for me. So I was like, I have to figure out something different. I have to get out of here and follow my own path.
What do you think your life would have looked like if you either had forced yourself to stay in that, or you hadn't, maybe nothing had worked out and you were forced nonetheless to stay in that?
I mean, I think I would have had a really successful corporate finance career. Honestly, I could have seen myself over the decades climbing and maybe becoming the CFO at the company I was working at. I was a really valued team member. So I could have done that, which is also part of the reason it was so hard to walk away. I was second guessing myself when it came time to quit my job. But yeah, I would have been in Kentucky working 9 to 5, probably not doing any of the cool adventures that I've gone on, probably not traveled as much. So it would have looked a lot different.
Maybe instead of saying, well, how would it have looked, I would say, how would it have felt?
I would have hated it. I've always felt so trapped in that environment. So I think it would have been very unhappy and miserable for me.
So, yeah, I mean, I assume that was the case. I certainly can say the same for myself. So why do you think you got depressed?
I got depressed because I started feeling that I didn't have any control over my time or my schedule. And it really spiraled from burnout to anxiety to depression. And it was really, really the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. Because I remember thinking, I don't feel like myself, and I don't know if I'll ever feel like myself again. So very hopeless place. I share that. It's definitely emotional, but I share it because if anyone else is feeling that way, nothing's wrong with you. I kept thinking, man, what's wrong with me? And it took me a while to really step back and be like, oh, actually, I'm struggling with something pretty big here and I need help. And so I finally got the help that I needed, thank goodness. But it's scary because a lot of people just aren't educated around it and they can't recognize what's going on.
Did you feel almost in a way, I don't know what the negative emotion would be, but some sort of additional negative emotion, like maybe selfishness or almost like spoiled, or like to basically realize, hey, I have it all. I have this dream that everybody is chasing and very few get. And yet here I am depressed. Why can't I just be happy?
Yeah, I definitely recognize that. And I thought that to myself, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? I would say that the second primary emotion, though, during that time was shame. I felt ashamed of myself. I would snap at people for no reason and later feel horrible about it, thinking that there was something wrong with me when really it was a mental health issue.
Have you read any of the work of John Bradshaw?
No, I haven't. Should I?
Well, if you want to, at least for me, become educated about and strategic and proactive about shame.
Ooh, yes.
He has a book called Healing the Shame That Binds You. And just that's really kind of been the focal point of his work, is that word shame. Even just, he was the original person that like pulled that out of the air and said, this is a big thing. We need to define it. We need to dig into it because it's like the silent destroyer of lives.
Yes. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out because I would love to read more. And it also reminds me of, is it Brene Brown that also talks about shame a lot? Yeah, she's great. Yeah, it was definitely a tough place when I was feeling depressed and feeling so out of control, but I'm grateful for it now because I learned such important lessons coming out of that. One of the things that got me in trouble, like I said, was feeling this lack of control over my time. When you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you're told, you should say yes to every opportunity that comes your way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that. When you're starting out, you got to hustle and get yourself out there and work your butt off. But there comes a point where if you continue to follow that advice, you're really going to get yourself in trouble. And that point came and went for me. I mean, my whole schedule was filled up with everyone else's priorities but my own, because I was saying yes to every single request that came my way. So I learned saying no is actually 100 times more powerful than saying yes. And I've learned to be viciously protective of my time.
And yet you still came on my show. I'm so flattered.
Of course I did.
No, that's interesting. It's one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn too, particularly in the last couple of years. And I suspect you experienced this too, like with your books being out there. I mean, as your quote stock rises and your profile expands, it's just crazy how everybody kind of wants a piece of you, you know?
Yes, and they expect a piece of you for free too, which I used to have a lot of guilt around, because I felt for some reason that, you know, people were entitled to my time for free. I felt that I should give it to them, but you can't operate that way and continue to grow and impact lives, because the more time you spend on free requests, the less time you are spending creating content and actually impacting lives.
You know, oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. And that's such a resonant thing you just said for me, because I think sometimes there's a tendency in the world to say, okay, well, this person has achieved X, so therefore they need to now be in the phase of their life where they're helping everyone else to achieve X. And it's like, it's almost like they're saying, well, it's not fair for you to keep trying to achieve more. Now you just have to start paying it back and forward and sideways, and it's all about other people. And it's like, no, what got me this far was being myself. I'm not going to be myself anymore if suddenly it's only about everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, you don't owe anybody anything. And harsh, right? It sounds harsh, but it's true. I think the people that really become successful over time are true givers anyways. And that's why it's such a struggle, because we want to help people for free and we want to give our time endlessly, but you can't. If you do that, that's unsustainable.
Yeah, and this is so powerful. I talk a lot about this, and I want to say it for the audience. The discipline to be merciless when it's called for. You know, I think a lot about like Bill Gates, for example. I mean, nobody can argue, regardless of what people think about his, you know, involvement in the COVID thing or whatever, like nobody can really argue that he's done a lot of amazing good in the world with his foundation and in the African continent and immunizations and all that stuff. And yet he was purportedly a ruthless business person. I mean, for decades, all the talk around Bill Gates was this guy's, you know, he's a capitalist pig. He's a control freak. He's trying to monopolize it and squash his competition. And the government sued him for antitrust and all this stuff. And yet you find out that not just in words, but in deeds, the guy was accumulating massive wealth so that he could go have massive impact and do a ton of good in the world. And think about a guy like that who clearly has a heart to serve. What if he hadn't had the discipline to be merciless when it was called for?
That's so true. I mean, I can't even imagine what our world would look like just without that one individual.
Yeah. And then what's interesting is like Steve Jobs, who everybody loves, and he was this, you know, it's almost like hippie type of business person. He was like almost just like love and innovation and creativity. Apparently the guy is like the world's like most tyrannical asshole, and he was impossible to be around. Isn't it interesting how the perception of being the cool way isn't necessarily the way that actually does the greatest good?
Yeah, that's so true. And I think we have a tendency to judge public figures like that, but none of us really know what's going on behind closed doors.
And I think we put way too much stock in being liked.
Oh yeah, I do. I mean, I'm aware of it, but it's hard not to. It's hard not to care about what people think of you.
Like, you seem like an eminently likable person now, but I suspect there was a time in your life when you were like, I'm busy, don't talk. Not. You might have been a little more discreet about it than that, but it's like, I'm really busy. I don't have time. I work 80 hours a week. I'm buying real estate. I live on $1,000 a month. I have no room in my life to deviate from my plan. Like, no offense, but don't bother me because I can't afford to be bothered.
Yeah, I mean, there's been periods of my time, back to the diet analogy, where I've wanted to eat really healthy. So I'd go out to...
Yeah, amen. I'm proudly alienating to some people in my life.
I love
and
that.
I make no apologies for it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm so if I haven't said it, I'm so impressed with what you've done and what you're doing, and just frankly how effectively you're doing it all. You're compressing decades into years and years into months. Clearly, I'm gonna go through your course. Not even so much because I want to know what's in it, but I want to experience you in it.
Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment. And I have to say, I love your mindset. I feel like we're the same person. So it's been a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah, no, of course. So where can the world go get more of this goodness?
Yeah. So both of my books, Money Honey and Passive Income Aggressive Retirement, are available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and audio. And I will give your listeners my Passive Income Starter Kit for free.
Ooh.
So if anyone wants to download that, you can go to moneyhoneyrachel.com/bonus.
moneyhoneyrachel.com/bonus. Clearly, moneyhoneyrachel.com is your website.
Yes.
We'll get all those links from you and make sure they appear wherever the show appears. Thanks for doing that, by the way. That's wonderful of you. And we actually have an offer for our audience on your behalf too, which is they can go get a free copy of our ebook, The Millionaire Shortcut. It's a digital download, which is the fastest way to become a millionaire. Maybe it's the second fastest. The fastest is just do everything Rachel said, because clearly she more than beat me to it. When I was her age, I was about to go $500,000 in debt. She's already retired. So this is we'll call it the second fastest way to become a millionaire. And if you go to millionairesecrets.com/Rachel R, then you can get that for free, and we'll know that you came from this episode. Man, Rachel, we've covered a lot of ground. I'm so grateful that you came on the show.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And thanks to everyone out there in the audience. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you for watching Millionaire Secrets. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and leave us a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you know whenever we release a new episode. Also, if you want to learn the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy, click the link in the description below to claim your free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut. And don't forget, Millionaire Secrets is available on all the major podcast platforms as well. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can listen on the go. Thanks for watching.